The day Ethan Harper died, Lila was arguing with a carton of milk. Not with a person, just the milk. It was one of those cardboard cartons with a stubborn cap that acted like it had sworn an oath never to open for anyone who had responsibilities. Lila twisted. The cap refused. She twisted harder. The carton slipped, and a thin white ribbon spilled across her kitchen counter like a dramatic little protest. "Noah," she called without looking up. "If you're pouring cereal, use a bowl and not your soul. I'm not cleaning up another." "Mum," Noah whined from the table. "Ella touched my spoon." "I did not," Ella sang, sticky fingers raised like she'd been accused of robbery. Lila grabbed a paper towel, wiped milk, and forced her voice into calm. "We do not start the morning with spoon crimes. Noah, use the blue spoon. Ella, wash your hands." Again, because whatever is on those fingers could qualify as a science project. It was a Tuesday. Ordinary. The kind of morning stitched together with small annoyances and little loves. Then her phone rang. Unknown number. Lila almost ignored it. Unknown numbers usually belonged to telemarketers and people who wanted to talk about her car's extended warranty, when she didn't even drive a car worth extending. But something in her chest tugged, tight and weird, like a warning bell trying to be polite. She answered. "Hello." A man's voice, careful and trained. "Mrs. Lila Harper?" "Yes. This is Officer James Callahan with the U.S. Coast Guard." The paper towel stopped moving in her hand. The kitchen noise, Noah's complaining, Ella's humming, kept going, as if her life hadn't just taken a step toward a cliff. "Coast Guard," Lila repeated, confused. Is this about your husband, Ethan Harper?" the officer said. Lila's brain tried to find Ethan in the right place. She pictured him in the airport this morning, rolling his suitcase, checking his watch, texting her something like boarding now. "Love you." Boston, he'd said last night. One-night trip. Quick meeting. He'd kissed her forehead after dinner, then helped Ella with her teeth because she always insisted Daddy did it better. He'd been warm. Normal. Real. "Is he okay?" Lila asked, and the sound of her own voice startled her. Too thin, too tight. A pause. There are pauses that feel like someone stepping back before delivering a punch. This was one of them. "Ma'am," the officer said gently, "there's been an incident involving a vessel off the coast near Montauk. Your husband was listed as a passenger." "Montauk." Lila blinked once. That's not possible. He's supposed to be on a flight to Boston." Another pause, and this one lasted just long enough for panic to stand up inside her and stretch. "We have a charter registration and passenger manifest," Callahan said. The weather turned quickly. The crew evacuated. "But Mr. Harper." "No," Lila whispered automatically, like saying the word could erase the sentence. "We initiated a search immediately," Callahan continued. "We're doing everything we can. Right now, he is considered missing." Missing. The word landed in Lila's body like ice water. Not in her mind. Her mind was too busy refusing, but in her limbs. Her fingers tingled. Her knees went hollow. Her throat closed. She sat down on the kitchen floor without choosing to. Just sank. Like her bones gave up. Noah's voice floated over her. "Mom, why are you sitting on the floor?" Ella hopped down from her chair and toddled over, bunny slippers thumping. "Mommy, you okay? Did you lose your balance?" Lila stared at their faces, two small, trusting universes, and felt the world tilt cruelly. On the phone, the officer kept speaking. Wind speed, water temperature, search grid protocols. Lila heard only fragments. "Search. Missing. Montauk." Her mouth opened. She swallowed and tried again. "I need to talk to my husband." "I understand, ma'am," Callahan said, and Lila hated him for understanding. Understanding meant he'd said this to other wives. Other husbands. Other families. It meant this was a script he'd practiced. "You're wrong," Lila whispered. "You have the wrong person." "I'm so sorry," Callahan said. "If you have any information that could help us." She ended the call without realizing she had pressed anything. The phone slid from her hand and clacked onto the tile. Mariah arrived 40 minutes later because Lila had called her sister in some half-sobbing language made of broken words and terror. Mariah didn't ask questions at the door. She entered and immediately looked for the children first, instinctively scanning like a soldier. "Kids, hey," Mariah said brightly, forcing normal into her voice. "Who wants to help Aunt Mariah make pancakes?" Noah hesitated. "Mom's on the floor." Mariah's face softened. She walked over and crouched next to Lila, who was still sitting where the milk had spilled, staring at a spot on the cabinet like the truth was hiding inside it. Mariah placed a hand on Lila's cheek. Hey, hey, I'm here. Talk to me. Lila's lips trembled. They called, she breathed. The Coast Guard. They said Ethan Montauk missing at sea. Mariah's eyes widened, then narrowed, like her brain immediately went to battle. Missing, she said carefully. Not dead. Lila's voice cracked. He was supposed to be in Boston. Mariah blinked. Boston. That's what he said. Lila swallowed hard. That's what he always says. Business. Trips. Meetings. Mariah's hand tightened. Okay. Okay, baby. We're going to handle one thing at a time. First, your kids. Lila looked at Noah and Ella and felt something inside her almost tear in half. Mariah stood and clapped her hands like a camp counselor. Pancake team. Ella, you're on stirring duty. Noah, you're head of the syrup department. Very serious position. Noah's eyes flicked to Lila. Is Dad coming home? Lila's chest folded inward. She tried to speak, but the truth jammed behind her teeth. Mariah leaned down to Noah. We don't know yet, bud. But Aunt Mariah's here, okay? We're going to take care of things. Noah nodded slowly, trying to be brave the way kids try when they sense the adults are breaking. Lila watched them move into the kitchen, watched Mariah turn on the stove with steady hands, and wondered how a person could keep living when the world had just ripped a hole in itself. The search lasted 9 days. 9 days of Lila sleeping in fragments, as if her body didn't trust rest anymore. 9 days of waking up to silence and checking her phone with a kind of desperation usually reserved for prayers. The Coast Guard called twice a day, sometimes more. Each call began with the same careful tone and ended with the same gentle absence. Expanded the search area. High swells. No confirmed sightings. The team is continuing efforts. By day 3, reporters had found the story. It wasn't even a big story at first, just a local segment. Successful New York consultant missing at sea. But Ethan Harper wasn't just a man with a name. He was a man with a polished LinkedIn, corporate connections, and a face that looked like it belonged on a brochure about trust. The headline grew. A photo appeared. Ethan in a suit, arm around Lila at a gala, smiling as if nothing bad had ever touched them. Another photo. Ethan with Noah on his shoulders at a park. Ethan holding Ella like she was the most precious thing in the universe. Lila hated those photos. Not because they were false, exactly, but because they were incomplete. They showed the man she loved, yes. The father her children adored. The husband who kissed foreheads and brought home airport chocolates. They didn't show the man who sometimes disappeared behind his phone. The man who took business calls outside even when it was freezing. The man who, in the last year, had started coming home from trips and heading straight for the shower, as if he needed to rinse off a life Lila wasn't invited into. She had noticed. She'd just filed it under work stress, like women always do, taking the sharp edges of a man's behavior and sanding them down with excuses. On day 5, Ethan's parents arrived. Judith Harper entered Lila's home like she owned the grief. Her makeup was perfect, her coat expensive, her eyes red in a way that looked practiced. She pulled Lila into a hug that felt more like a performance than comfort. "Oh, my poor girl," Judith sobbed loudly. "My Ethan, my baby." Lila stood there stiffly. Her body didn't know how to receive the grief of a woman who would, in the next breath, judge her. Richard Harper followed more quietly, his jaw set, his grief arranged into something dignified and controlled. He shook Lila's hand like she was an employee, not a daughter-in-law. "We'll get through this," he said. Judith wiped her eyes and immediately scanned the living room as if searching for evidence of failure. "Have you been eating?" she demanded. "You look pale. This is what happens when women don't take care of themselves." Lila stared at her. Mariah, standing behind Lila, muttered under her breath, "Here we go." The Harpers stayed for 2 nights. Judith criticized Lila's thin walls, her too small living room, her lack of structure. Even in grief, Judith needed control. On the second night, Lila heard Judith whispering to Richard in the guest room. "It's not right," Judith hissed. "Ethan wouldn't be out on a boat. That's not his lifestyle." Richard's voice was low. "Apparently it is." Judith sniffed. Something doesn't add up. She probably knows more than she's saying. Lila froze in the hallway, one hand on the doorframe. Mariah stepped beside her, eyes fierce. "Say the word," Mariah whispered. "Say the word and I'll go in there like a hurricane." Lila shook her head slowly, tears burning. Not yet. She didn't have energy to fight the living while the sea was still fighting her husband. By day 9, the Coast Guard officer's voice changed. It wasn't hopeful anymore. Mrs. Harper, Callahan said, we are transitioning from active search to recovery efforts. Recovery. The word turned Lila's blood to cold syrup. So you're giving up, she said, and her voice was surprisingly steady. We are not giving up, Callahan replied gently. But the probability of survival. Stop, Lila whispered. She hung up before he could say it. She went into the bathroom, shut the door, and sat on the edge of the tub because it felt like the only place in the house small enough to contain her. She pressed both hands over her mouth and screamed into her palms until her throat burned. Then she wiped her face, stood up, and walked out like her children hadn't just lost their father in the most invisible way possible. Noah was in the hallway, eyes wide. Mom, are you crying? Lila knelt and pulled him into her arms. His small body felt too warm, too alive, while something inside her had just died. Yeah, she admitted, voice trembling. I'm crying. Noah swallowed. Is Dad coming back? Lila's mouth opened, and for the first time in her life she wished language didn't exist. Because any answer would be violence. I don't know, baby, she whispered. I don't know. And that was the first honest thing she'd said in days. The funeral happened without a body. There was a casket anyway, closed, polished, expensive, because grief apparently needed furniture. People arrived in waves. Co-workers, clients, neighbors, Ethan's business partners. They looked at Lila with soft eyes and practiced pity, and Lila felt like a character in a play she hadn't auditioned for. Ethan's partner, Greg Lowe, hugged her and said, "He was one of the best men I've ever known." Lila almost laughed, not because Ethan wasn't good, but because no one knew how complicated goodness could be. Judith sobbed dramatically at the front row, clutching a tissue like it was a prop. Richard sat rigid, face blank, eyes shining with anger more than grief, as if death had offended him. Noah stood beside Lila, silent. Ella kept whispering, "Daddy is coming," like she could will it into reality. When the pastor said, "We are here to celebrate Ethan's life," Lila's stomach twisted. Celebrate. She didn't want celebration. She wanted answers. She wanted her husband back. She wanted to rewind time and grab him by the shoulders before he walked toward that boat and say, "Where are you really going, Ethan?" After the service, as people filed out, a woman Lila didn't recognize approached quietly. She was blonde, elegant, mid-30s maybe. Her eyes were swollen, but she held herself together with discipline. She lingered near the casket for a moment, then turned and looked directly at Lila. Not with sympathy, with something sharper. Recognition. Lila's breath caught. Their eyes locked. The woman's lips parted as if she might speak. Then she didn't. She turned and left, moving fast, as if she'd seen enough. Lila watched her go, an uneasy chill crawling over her skin. Mariah leaned in. "Who was that?" "I don't know," Lila whispered. Mariah's eyes narrowed. "She looked like she knew you." Lila swallowed. Or she knew him. The seed planted itself then, small, poisonous, and quiet. Not just grief. Suspicion. In the weeks after the funeral, the world expected Lila to move forward politely. Paperwork arrived in stacks. Insurance forms. Probate notices. Bank documents. Business accounts. Ethan's phone, returned in a sealed evidence bag, was dead and salt-stained. Lila held it like it was holy, like if she stared hard enough it would light up and reveal a message from beyond. Every night, she replayed their last conversation. Ethan packing his suitcase while Lila folded laundry. "You sure it's just one night?" she'd asked. He'd smiled, that calm, reassuring smile he used like medicine. "Just one night. Boston's quick. I'll be back before the kids even miss me. Promise." He'd stepped closer and kissed her forehead. Promise. Promises, she learned, were sometimes just beautifully wrapped lies. 2 months later, a letter arrived from a law firm. Cream envelope, embossed seal. The kind of paper that carried weight. Lila opened it at the kitchen counter while Noah worked on homework and Ella colored hearts on scrap paper. The letter stated that Ethan's estate was entering probate. There were assets, retirement accounts, investment portfolios, business interests. Then one line punched Lila's lungs. "Additionally, we must notify you of a potential claim filed by a third party asserting spousal interest." Lila reread it 3 times. Mariah, visiting for the evening because she refused to let Lila drown alone, leaned over her shoulder. "What does that mean?" Lila's voice thinned. "It means someone is claiming they were his spouse." Mariah blinked hard. That's not possible." Lila's fingers shook. It has a name. She turned the letter. At the bottom, printed neatly, claimant, Claire Elise Donovan. Chicago, Illinois. Chicago. The word rang like a bell and then shattered into sharp pieces. Because Ethan had gone to Chicago often. So often it had become background noise. Chicago again, he'd say casually, pulling out his suitcase like it was a normal accessory. Clients, he'd explain. Expansion. Lila had nodded, kissed him goodbye, kept life running. And now Chicago was no longer a city. It was a door. Mariah snatched the letter, read it, and muttered, "Oh, hell no." Lila's stomach rolled. Who is she? Mariah's eyes hardened. We're getting a lawyer. Lila's gaze fixed somewhere far away. And then we're going to Chicago. Sandra Pike was the kind of lawyer who didn't waste empathy on things she couldn't bill. She was sharp-eyed, brisk, and wore suits like armor. Her office smelled like leather and expensive coffee. She read the letter, tapped her pen once, and said, "This could be a nuisance claim." Lila's nails dug into her palm. Or it could be real. Sandra nodded slowly. Yes. If it's real, your husband committed bigamy, which complicates probate and introduces criminal elements. The word bigamy made Lila's skin crawl. That sounds like something from a documentary, Lila whispered. Sandra's expression didn't change. It happens more than you'd think. Mariah leaned forward. How do we find out? Sandra typed quickly. We request evidence from the claimant's attorney. Documentation. Certificates. Joint accounts. Lila's voice shook. And if she has it? Sandra's eyes met hers. Then you'll have to accept that Ethan had another life. Another life. It felt like someone had reached inside Lila and rearranged her organs. Lila left the office with Mariah, walked to her car, and sat behind the wheel without turning the key. Mariah said softly, "Lila, breathe." Lila's hands were trembling. I packed his toiletries. Mariah blinked. What? I packed his toiletries, Lila repeated, voice cracking. I folded his shirts. I kissed him goodbye. I held our kids while her voice broke. While he lived a whole other life. Mariah reached over and squeezed her hand. We're going to get the truth. Lila stared ahead. I don't even know if I want the truth. Mariah's voice was firm. You do. Because not knowing will eat you alive. Lila swallowed hard. Then we're going to Chicago. The flight to Chicago felt like traveling into a nightmare someone else wrote. Lila stared out the window at clouds that looked peaceful and thought, how dare the sky be calm? They rented a car, drove to the address Sandra had obtained, and pulled up outside a sleek condo tower with a doorman and glass doors. Mariah muttered, Of course she lives in a building that looks like it has a personal therapist. Lila's stomach tightened. Ethan always liked nice things. Inside, the lobby smelled like expensive candles and quiet money. Lila approached the desk. I'm here to see Claire Donovan. The doorman looked polite but cautious. Do you have an appointment? No, Lila said, and surprised herself with the steadiness in her voice. But she's expecting me. The doorman hesitated, then called upstairs. When he hung up, his eyebrows lifted slightly. Penthouse B. You can go up. Penthouse. Lila swallowed. Her legs felt heavy as she stepped into the elevator. On the ride up, Mariah whispered, If I start swinging, you pull me back. Lila's lips twitched faintly. If you start swinging, I might hold your purse. The doors opened onto a quiet hallway. Lila walked to Penthouse B, raised her hand, and knocked. 2 knocks. Then the door opened. Claire Donovan didn't look like a villain. She looked like someone who had been trying to keep herself together for a long time. Mid-30s. Dark hair pulled back. Eyes sharp with exhaustion. She was pretty in a way that wasn't loud, more precise. Her gaze flicked over Lila like she'd seen her in photos. Then Claire said calmly, Lila Harper. Lila's mouth went dry. Claire Donovan. Claire stepped back. Come in. Lila hesitated, then walked inside. The condo was beautiful. Minimalist, warm, curated. And on the wall was a framed photo. A man's hand holding a toddler's hand. The toddler wore a red jacket. Lila's vision blurred. Her heart slammed. Claire noticed her staring. That's Liam, she said quietly. Lila's voice cracked. Who is Liam? Claire held her gaze. My son. Mariah whispered, Oh my God. Lila's knees went weak. She gripped the back of a chair. No, Claire's voice didn't shake. Yes. Lila stared at her, nausea rising. Ethan. Was his father, Claire finished. Silence flooded the room, thick and suffocating. Claire walked to a console table, pulled out a folder like she'd been waiting for this moment, and placed it on the coffee table. "Before you call me a liar," Claire said, "look." Lila sat down slowly, like her body didn't trust itself to stand. Inside the folder were copies of documents. A lease agreement with Ethan's signature. A joint bank account. Photos. Ethan in a Chicago park, smiling, holding a toddler on his hip. Lila's breath came out in a broken sound. That's him." Claire flipped one more page. A marriage certificate. Lila's hands shook as she picked it up. Ethan Michael Harper. Claire Elise Donovan. Date, for years ago. For years. Lila stared at it as if letters might rearrange themselves into sanity. Mariah snatched it, eyes blazing. "This is illegal." Claire's jaw tightened. "Tell me something I don't know." Lila's throat burned. "You filed a claim." "Why?" Claire's voice sharpened with pain. "Because he promised me a future. Because my son deserves stability. Because Ethan disappeared and left us with silence." Lila's laugh was bitter. "He left me with a funeral." Claire flinched, just slightly. Mariah cut in, accusing. "Did you know he was still married?" Claire's eyes flashed. "He told me you were separated." Lila's head snapped up. "No," Claire's voice rose. "He said you stayed together for the kids, that it was basically over." "It wasn't," Lila said, voice trembling. "We weren't separated. We weren't basically over. We had dinners. We had family movie nights. He held my daughter while she fell asleep." Claire swallowed, eyes glistening. "Then he lied to both of us." Lila stared at the condo again. "How long did he come here?" Claire hesitated. "Years." Lila's chest tightened. "Every business trip." Claire's silence was answer enough. Mariah whispered. "That man had 2 calendars and 1 conscience." Claire pressed a hand to her forehead, and for the first time she looked less controlled. "I didn't want this," she admitted, voice cracking. "I didn't want to be someone's secret." Lila's voice came out raw. "But you were okay being someone's second wife?" Claire flinched. He made it sound complicated, not cruel. Lila's eyes burned. She wanted to hate Claire. It would have been easier if Claire had been evil. But Claire looked like she'd been drowning too. Lila swallowed hard. "The day he disappeared, what happened?" Claire's posture changed, tightening, cautious. "What do you mean?" "The boat," Lila said, voice sharp. "Montauk. The storm. The Coast Guard." Claire's eyes flickered away for half a second. Then she said quietly, "I don't think he died." Mariah's head snapped toward her. "What?" Lila stood so fast the chair scraped. "What did you just say?" Claire grabbed her phone with trembling fingers. "I got a message. That day." Lila's blood turned cold. "From who?" Claire swallowed hard. "From Ethan." "No," Lila whispered. Claire opened her messages, scrolled, and turned the screen toward them. A message stamped with the date of Ethan's death. "Ethan, I can't do this anymore. Don't contact me. Don't look for me. I'm sorry." Lila stared at it until the letters blurred. Her voice came out as a whisper full of poison. "He faked it." Claire's eyes filled with tears. "I think he did." The room tilted. The ocean wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was a strategy. A disappearing act. Lila's hands curled into fists. Why would he do that? Claire wiped her cheek angrily. Because he couldn't keep balancing. Because he was scared. Because he wanted out. Mariah's voice was hard. So he chose to abandon everyone. Claire nodded, tears falling. He chose himself. Lila's face went still, something inside her snapping into place like a lock. She stared at Claire and realized something terrible. This wasn't a love triangle. It was a crime scene. And the man she married wasn't missing. He was hiding. Lila returned to New York with her body moving, but her mind burning. She tucked her kids into bed like always, made their lunches, answered school emails, smiled at neighbors. But inside, she was a wire pulled tight. She couldn't tell Noah and Ella yet. Not without proof. Not without a plan. Because if Ethan had staged his death, then he had already proven he could do monstrous things with a calm smile. And Lila refused to let her children be hurt again by uncertainty. So she called Sandra. Sandra listened, then said, "Forward me the message." Immediately, Lila did. Sandra's voice sharpened. "This is significant. If it's authentic, it suggests fraud. Insurance fraud. Identity fraud. Potential criminal charges." Mariah leaned in. "Tell her about the blonde woman at the funeral." Lila hesitated. "There was a woman. Blonde. She looked like she recognized me. She left quickly." Sandra paused. "Interesting. That could be connected, or it could be coincidence." Lila's voice went low. "Nothing feels like coincidence anymore." Sandra exhaled. We need an investigator. Lila didn't hesitate. Hire the best one you know. Ray Nolan didn't look like Hollywood. He looked like someone who'd lived in the shadow of other people's lives for too long and stopped pretending surprise existed. Mid-50s. Weathered face. Sharp, tired eyes. A voice that carried no romance. He sat across from Lila in a small office that smelled like coffee and old paper. He listened while Lila explained everything. The boat, the Boston trip, Claire, the message. Ray took notes quietly. When she finished, he leaned back. People don't fake their deaths unless they're running from something. Lila's jaw tightened. He's running from responsibility. Ray nodded. Could be. But usually there's money too. Mariah folded her arms. He had money. Ray's pen tapped the paper. Money isn't just about having it. It's about moving it. If he planned this, there will be trails. Lila's eyes were cold. Then find them. Ray nodded. I'll start at Montauk, Marina Records, charter broker, security cameras. Then financial activity leading up to the incident. Lila swallowed. How long? Ray shrugged. Depends how smart he is. Mariah muttered. He's smart enough to ruin 2 women. Ray's gaze flicked to her. Smart men make dumb mistakes when they think they're untouchable. Lila's hands tightened. Then let him make one. Ray stood. I'll call when I have something. Lila watched him leave and realized her grief had transformed completely. She wasn't mourning anymore. She was hunting. That night, Lila lay in bed staring at the ceiling. Ethan's shirt still hung in the closet. His shoes still lined the floor like obedient soldiers. She reached for his favorite button-down and pressed the sleeve to her face. It still smelled faintly like him, a familiar scent that used to mean home. Now it meant betrayal. I trusted you, she whispered into the darkness. No reply. Only her own breathing, heavy and furious. Outside, the world kept spinning like nothing had happened. And Lila learned the cruelest truth of grief. The world never pauses for your heartbreak. Ray Nolan's first call came 5 days later. Lila was in the grocery store, staring blankly at cereal boxes, when her phone vibrated. She stepped aside near the dairy section and answered. Ray! His voice was clipped. I confirmed he was at Montauk. Lila's blood went cold. How? Charter broker recognized him, Ray said. Cash payment. No paper trail beyond a name. But the broker remembers Ethan because he tipped like a man trying to buy silence. Lila's fingers tightened around the phone. Was he alone? Ray paused. No, Lila's stomach clenched. Claire. No, Ray said. A blonde woman. Mid-30s. Dressed expensive. Lila's heart slammed. The woman at the funeral. Ray continued. Security footage shows them arriving together. She didn't board with the crew. She boarded with him. Lila's throat burned. So there was another woman. Looks like it, Ray said. Mariah, who had accompanied Lila to the store because she refused to leave her sister alone too long, watched Lila's face and mouthed. What? Lila whispered. Another woman. Blonde. Montauk. Mariah's eyes narrowed like a storm. Of course. Ray's voice returned. There's more. Lila's pulse spiked. Tell me. The storm was real, Ray said. But the timing is suspicious. The crew evacuated fast. And here's the thing. One of the crew members reported a smaller craft near the vessel just before evacuation. Lila's breath caught. Like a getaway boat? Could be, Ray said. I can't confirm. But it fits. Also, there were unusual withdrawals from Ethan's accounts in the weeks before. Lila swallowed. How much? Ray exhaled. Enough to set up a new life. Lila's mouth went dry. So he planned it. Looks that way, Ray said. Mariah's voice cracked with rage beside her. That snake, Ray continued. I'm working on tracking where that money went. But if he did this right, he's using a new identity. Lila's grip tightened until her fingers hurt. Find it. Ray's voice was steady. I will. Lila hung up and stood motionless in the grocery store aisle while families pushed carts and argued about yogurt flavors. She stared at a box of Cheerios like it was a foreign language. Mariah touched her arm. Lila. Lila's voice came out flat. He didn't drown. He ran. Mariah's eyes burned. Then we drag him back. The next weeks turned into a strange double life for Lila, ironic considering. By day, she was mom. She made pancakes, signed permission slips, attended parent-teacher meetings with a smile that felt stapled to her face. By night, she was something else, a woman reading bank statements like scripture, sending messages to Sandra, and waking up at 2 a.m. with a sudden urge to scream Ethan's name until the neighborhood shook. She met Claire twice in that period, quietly, carefully. Two women connected by a man who treated families like interchangeable furniture. They weren't friends. Not really. But there was a bond that formed in the shared wreckage. Claire showed Lila more proof. Pictures of Ethan holding Liam at a pumpkin patch in Chicago. Ethan's handwriting on a birthday card. My little man. Always. Lila stared at that handwriting and thought of Noah's birthday card from last year. Ethan's handwriting had been on that too. Same curve. Same flourish. Same lies. Claire confessed things in fractured pieces. How he'd arrive Thursday nights, Claire said once, voice hollow. Always late. Always tired. He'd shower first. Then he'd hold Liam and say he'd missed him like crazy. Lila swallowed, rage flashing. He showered when he got home to me too. Claire's eyes flickered, guilt passing through. I didn't know he did that with you. Lila laughed bitterly. It's like he had a script. Claire nodded slowly. He was good at being who people needed. That was the problem. Ethan didn't just cheat. He performed. Ray called again 3 weeks later. His voice sounded different, sharper, more certain. I found a name, he said. Lila's entire body tightened. What name? Daniel Cross, Ray said. New LLC registered 6 months ago. Small consulting front. Mailing address tied to a beach town in Florida. Florida. Sun, reinvention, disappearing into brightness. Lila's pulse roared. Are you sure? Ray exhaled. As sure as I can be without seeing his face. But the financial trail points there. Money moved through a series of accounts and landed in a bank in Florida under that name. Lila's mouth went dry. So he's alive. Ray didn't answer directly. You want to know for sure? We go there. Mariah was on speaker, listening from Lila's living room. She stood up so fast her chair scraped. We're going. Claire, patched in on a 3-way call, whispered. Oh my God. Lila's voice was steady, cold. We're going. Ray paused. I should warn you, if he sees you coming, he'll run again. Lila's eyes were ice. Then we don't let him see us coming. They planned it like a quiet war. Sandra advised caution, but Lila had no patience for caution that protected Ethan's comfort. Ray flew ahead to verify the address. He requested surveillance and pulled local records. Claire arranged childcare for Liam. Lila arranged childcare for Noah and Ella through Mariah, who moved into Lila's house like a protective force. Mom, why is Aunt Mariah sleeping here? Noah asked one night, eyes worried. Lila forced calm. Because Aunt Mariah loves us, and we're going through some grown-up stuff. She's helping. Noah's voice trembled. Is Dad coming back? Lila knelt and took his face in her hands. Buddy, I'm trying to figure out what happened. I promise I'll tell you the truth when I know it. Noah nodded slowly, trying to be brave. Ella hugged her stuffed bunny and whispered, Daddy's in the ocean. Lila's heart cracked. She kissed Ella's forehead and whispered, We'll make sure you're safe. Always. Because no matter what Ethan did, Lila refused to let his choices poison her children's future. Florida smelled like salt and sun and secrets. Lila stepped out of the rental car and squinted at the brightness, feeling like the light itself was insulting her grief. Ray met them in a parking lot outside a low office building with tinted windows that he nodded toward the building. This is the LLC address. I have eyes on it. Lila's heart pounded. Claire stood beside her, trembling, face pale. Ray spoke quietly. We wait. He shows up eventually. They sat in Ray's car, the air thick with tension and the faint smell of coffee. Minutes passed. Then the door opened. A man stepped out. He wore sunglasses, a casual shirt, his posture looser than Ethan's New York posture. Like he'd shed a skin. But Lila knew him anyway. Because she knew the slope of his shoulders, the way he walked, the way his head tilted slightly as if the world owed him space. Her breath stopped. Claire's hand flew to her mouth. Ray whispered, That's him? Lila's voice came out like steel. Yes. Ethan Daniel walked across the parking lot, keys in hand. Alive. Breathing. Moving through sunlight while Lila's children had cried themselves to sleep holding on to the idea of a dead father. Claire choked on a sob, tears spilling. Oh my God. Lila didn't cry. She didn't move. She simply watched as the man who had died opened a car door like he'd done nothing worse than miss a meeting. For a second, Ethan paused. His head turned, scanning the lot. Lila's entire body locked. Had he felt her presence? Had the past brushed him like a cold hand? Then he got in the car and drove off. Ray started the engine. We follow. Claire grabbed Lila's arm. What if? Lila's eyes stayed forward. We don't let him disappear again. Ethan drove to a waterfront neighborhood. Not a mansion, but a private, tasteful house with palm trees and a quiet driveway. He got out, walked inside like he belonged there. Lila stared at the house, fury rising in her throat like bile. Claire's voice shook. He lives there. Ray nodded. Seems so. I can get utility confirmation. Lila reached for the door handle instinctively. Ray grabbed her wrist. Not yet. If you confront him now and he runs, we lose him. Lila's jaw clenched. I want him to see my face. Ray's eyes were firm. He will, but with police nearby. You want justice, not a chase. Lila forced herself to breathe. Because Ray was right. Ethan had already proven he could vanish. Lila refused to give him another head start. Ray said, "Give me 24 hours. I'll lock down proof." Lila's voice was flat. Do it. That night, in a cheap motel that smelled like bleach and air freshener, Lila sat on the edge of the bed and stared at her hands. Claire sat on the other bed, quietly crying, scrolling through old photos of Ethan and Liam. I feel stupid, Claire whispered. Lila didn't look up. You're not stupid. Claire's voice broke. I defended him. I made excuses. I told myself he loved me. Lila swallowed hard. He probably did. In the way Ethan loves. In the way he loves whatever makes him feel good. Claire wiped her face angrily. How can a person do this? How can he build 2 families and then just leave? Lila's laugh was soft and bitter. Because he didn't build families. He built stages. Claire looked up. Stages. Lila's eyes were tired. He played husband in New York. Played husband in Chicago. And when the roles got too heavy, he walked off stage. Claire's tears returned. And left us to clean up the props. Lila nodded slowly. Yes. She lay back, staring at the ceiling. She thought about their wedding, the way Ethan had cried when he saw her walking down the aisle, the way he'd whispered, I can't believe I get to be yours. She remembered believing him. She remembered how safe she'd felt. Now she realized the most dangerous men weren't the loud ones. They were the calm ones. The next day, Ray arrived with a folder. Utility bills in his new name, he said. Photos. Video. Bank activity. Lila's hands shook as she flipped through. There was Ethan stepping into the house, alive. Ethan holding grocery bags like a normal man buying bread, not a man who had staged an ocean tragedy. Claire covered her mouth, sobbing. Ray's voice stayed steady. We can take this to local law enforcement and coordinate with New York. Fraud, identity issues, potential warrants. Lila looked up, eyes cold. Do it. Ray nodded. But listen, once the law gets involved, this gets messy. He'll have lawyers. He'll spin stories. Lila's voice was low. Let him spin. I have the truth. At the police station, the officer who met them at first looked skeptical, until he saw the evidence. Then his posture shifted. This is serious, he said. Lila nodded. I know. We'll contact New York authorities, the officer said. There are jurisdiction issues, but fraud crosses state lines. Insurance companies will want this too. Lila's stomach twisted at the thought of insurance. The death claim, the funeral, the sympathy checks, all based on a lie. The officer looked at Lila. Ma'am, are you safe? Has he threatened you before? Lila's jaw tightened. He didn't need to threaten. He just left us to drown. The officer nodded slowly. We'll approach carefully. If he's using a false identity, he may resist. Lila's eyes hardened. Good luck to him. I'm done being gentle. They returned to the waterfront house with police nearby. 2 unmarked cars parked discreetly. Ray stood back, watching. Claire trembled beside Lila, her hands clenched. Lila's heartbeat thundered in her ears. An officer walked to the door and knocked. Footsteps inside. Then the door opened. Ethan stood there. For one moment, his face was blank, like he was still pretending. Then his eyes landed on Lila. And the color drained from his face, so fast it looked like someone unplugged him. Lila, he whispered, like saying her name might soften what he'd done. Lila stared at him, feeling something in her settle into a cold, final place. Not love. Not grief. Clarity. Hello, Ethan, she said calmly. Or do you prefer Daniel now? His mouth opened. Closed. His eyes darted toward the police, then back. What is this? He stammered. Claire stepped forward. Ethan's eyes widened. Claire. Claire's voice broke, shaking with fury. You left my son without a father. Ethan flinched. Lila cut in, voice like ice. You left my children believing you were dead. Ethan's throat moved as he swallowed. His eyes flicked wildly, searching for a story he could sell. You don't understand, he snapped suddenly, anger flashing. I was suffocating. Expectations. Responsibilities. Lila laughed, loud and bitter. Oh my God. Listen to you. You staged a death, and you're complaining about responsibilities. The officer stepped forward. Sir, we need you to come with us. Ethan's eyes locked on Lila, pleading now. Lila, please let me explain. Lila stepped closer until she was right in front of him, close enough to smell his familiar cologne. That scent used to mean home. Now it meant rot. She spoke softly, so only he could hear. You died the day you decided we were disposable. His eyes glistened. I loved you. Lila's smile was small and cruel. You loved yourself wearing my life like a costume. Then she stepped back. The officer took Ethan's arm. Ethan's shoulders slumped as he was guided away. Not drowned, not missing, just exposed. Claire sobbed openly. Lila stood still, watching the man who haunted her grief become a man in handcuffs. Closure didn't feel like peace. It felt like power. But Ethan didn't stop being Ethan just because he got caught. He fought. Of course he fought. The legal fallout detonated like a bomb. Insurance companies froze accounts. Probate halted. Ethan's business partners panicked. Greg Lowe called Lila 8 times in one day. Lila, Greg said when she finally answered, voice strained. We have clients threatening to leave. We have contracts. Lila's voice was flat. My husband faked his death. Greg exhaled hard. I know. But this is bigger than. No, Lila cut in. This is exactly as big as it is. My kids cried at a funeral, Greg. So don't call me about your clients like they're the main tragedy. Greg went quiet. I'm sorry, he whispered. Lila's voice softened only slightly. So am I. Ethan's parents called too. Judith's voice was hysteria wrapped in rage. How could you let this happen? How could you? Lila's eyes narrowed. How could I let this happen? Judith ignored her. This is humiliating. The press. Do you understand what people are saying about our family? Lila's laugh was sharp. Your family? Judith, your son had 2 families. Pick one. Judith gasped as if insulted. Ethan made mistakes. But he's still my son. Lila's voice turned cold. And Noah and Ella are still his children. He abandoned them. So forgive me if your embarrassment isn't my priority. Richard called later, voice controlled but sharp. We want to handle this privately. Lila's eyes burned. Privately? He staged a death. That's not private. That's a crime. Richard's jaw clenched audibly through the phone. Lila. No, Lila interrupted. You don't get to manage this like a PR crisis. You don't get to pretend it's a family disagreement. Your son committed fraud and destroyed children's lives. Richard went quiet. Then, almost softly, what do you want? Lila exhaled. I want him to face consequences. And I want my children to be protected. Richard's voice hardened. He will. But remember, Lila. Ethan is still Ethan. He will try to turn this. Lila's mouth tightened. Let him try. The first court hearing in New York felt surreal. Lila walked into the courthouse with Mariah beside her, Sandra in front, and a lump in her throat that had nothing to do with tears and everything to do with rage. Reporters waited outside, cameras flashing. No comment, Sandra said firmly, guiding Lila past. Inside, Lila saw Ethan again. He sat at the defense table in a crisp suit, hair neatly styled, face composed. He looked like the same man from the gala photos. Like he hadn't committed emotional murder. When his eyes met Lila's, his expression softened into something pleading. It was the look he used when he wanted forgiveness. Lila stared back without blinking. No softness. No invitation. Ethan's lawyer, an expensive-looking man with a smug jaw, argued that Ethan had been mentally overwhelmed, that he'd experienced acute stress, that his actions were a tragic mistake. Lila listened and felt her hands curl into fists. Mental overwhelm. Acute stress. Words designed to turn betrayal into a misunderstanding. Sandra stood and spoke clearly. Mr. Harper did not wander into the ocean accidentally. He staged his disappearance, assumed a false identity, transferred assets, and left minor children to grieve at a funeral for a father who was alive. The judge's expression tightened. Ethan's lawyer objected. The judge overruled. And Lila watched Ethan's face flicker. Not guilt, not sorrow. Annoyance. Like he was irritated his plan hadn't worked perfectly. That was when Lila understood something that nearly knocked the wind out of her. Ethan wasn't sorry he hurt them. He was sorry he got caught. Then the blonde woman appeared. Not in court at first, outside. Lila stepped out of the courthouse into the cold air and saw her standing near a pillar. Elegant, controlled, blonde. The same woman from the funeral. Their eyes met. The woman hesitated, then walked toward Lila with quiet determination. Mariah's hand went to Lila's elbow. That's her. Lila's heart pounded. I know. The woman stopped a few feet away. Her voice was low. Lila Harper? Lila's jaw tightened. Who are you? The woman swallowed. My name is Vanessa Caldwell. Lila stared. Why were you at my husband's funeral? Vanessa's eyes flickered with pain. Because I thought he was dead. Lila's laugh was bitter. Apparently we were all invited to that lie. Vanessa flinched. I didn't know about you, she blurted. Not really. I knew he was married once. He said you were his ex. Lila's chest tightened. He said that to everyone. Vanessa's voice trembled. I met him a year ago. He told me he was separating, that he was stuck. He made me believe. Lila's eyes hardened. You were with him in Montauk. Vanessa froze. Mariah stepped forward, voice sharp. Don't play dumb. Vanessa's shoulders sagged. Yes. Lila's stomach twisted. Why? Vanessa's eyes filled with tears she tried to hold back. Because he asked me to. He said he needed a clean break. He said he was going to disappear and start over. Lila's voice went icy. And you helped him. Vanessa flinched. I didn't know what it would do. I swear I didn't. He made it sound like he was escaping abuse. Like he was scared. Lila's laugh was hollow. Ethan? Scared. Vanessa swallowed. He's convincing. Lila stepped closer, anger burning. So you watched him fake his death, and you didn't think about his children? Vanessa's face crumpled. I didn't know about the kids. He told me you didn't have any. Lila's entire body went still. He erased his children. Just erased them. Mariah hissed, that is sick. Vanessa wiped her cheeks quickly. I came because I can help you. I know things. I know where he planned to go. I know who helped. Lila's eyes narrowed. Why would you help? Vanessa's voice broke. Because I realized I was part of something evil. And because he left me too. Lila stared at her, disbelief and fury mixing. Vanessa whispered, he used me, Lila. I thought I was special. I thought I was the one he chose. Then he disappeared and never came back for me. Lila's jaw tightened. Welcome to the club. Vanessa flinched but nodded. I deserve that. Sandra approached then, eyes sharp. Mrs. Harper, who is this? Lila didn't look away from Vanessa. Someone who helped him run. Vanessa's voice was urgent. I have proof. Messages. Plans. Please, let me give them to you. I want to make this right. Lila's instinct screamed to reject her. To spit venom. But Lila wasn't fighting for pride anymore. She was fighting for truth. And truth sometimes came from ugly places. Lila's voice was cold. If you're lying, I'll destroy you. Vanessa nodded quickly. I understand. Sandra's eyes narrowed. We will speak privately. With documentation. Vanessa's shoulders sagged with relief. Thank you. Lila watched her and felt something twisted settle in her chest. Ethan didn't have two lives. He had a whole network of lies expanding like rot. Vanessa's evidence cracked the case wider. Texts from Ethan about the plan. A draft email where he referred to himself as Daniel before he died. A message, after Montauk, I'll be free. You'll never hear from Ethan again. Vanessa also revealed the man who helped coordinate the boat situation. A fixer Ethan had met through shady business connections. That moved the case from desperate man to deliberate criminal. The judge approved deeper investigation. Insurance companies joined aggressively. And Ethan's calm composure finally began to crack. At the next hearing, Ethan looked thinner. When his lawyer argued again for stress and mental collapse, the judge's eyes stayed hard. You orchestrated a disappearance, the judge said bluntly. That is not a momentary lapse. That is planning. Ethan's jaw clenched. Lila watched him and felt nothing like pity. She felt relief. Because for months, the world had treated Ethan as a victim of the sea. Now the world was seeing him as what he was. A man who tried to erase consequences. Lila still hadn't told the children. Not fully. She'd told them their dad had made bad choices and wasn't coming home. But she hadn't explained the staged death. The double life. Because how do you explain to a child that their father chose deception over them? Eventually, she had to. It happened one evening after Noah came home from school with red eyes. He stood in the kitchen, shoulders trembling. Ethan's alive, Noah said quietly. Lila froze. The air left her lungs. Mariah, sitting at the table, looked up sharply. Lila knelt. Noah, who told you that? Noah's voice cracked. Kids at school. Their parents talk. They said my dad didn't really die. They said he. Noah swallowed hard, tears spilling. They said he left us. Lila's heart shattered. She pulled Noah into her arms, holding him tight. Buddy, Noah's voice was muffled against her shirt. Was I not good enough? Lila's eyes filled. No. No, baby. Listen to me. This isn't because of you. This is because your father made a selfish choice. Noah pulled back, eyes wet and furious in a way that made Lila ache. Why would he do that? Lila swallowed. She couldn't protect him with softness anymore. Not from this. Because, Lila said gently, sometimes adults are broken in ways kids can't fix. And your dad, he made a choice that hurt everyone. Ella wandered into the kitchen then, clutching her bunny. Why is Noah crying? Lila's throat tightened. She opened her arms and pulled Ella close too. Baby, Lila whispered, kissing her hair. Daddy isn't coming back. Ella's lip trembled. Because he's in the ocean? Lila's eyes burned. No, honey. Daddy, he's alive, but he made a bad choice. He left. Ella blinked, confused. He left like to the store? Lila's voice broke. No. Like far. Ella's face crumpled. But why? Because he's selfish, Lila wanted to say. Because he's a coward. Because he cared more about his freedom than your little hearts. But she looked at her daughter's small, devastated face and chose words that wouldn't poison her forever. I don't know why, Lila whispered. But I know this, you are loved. You are safe. And Mommy is here. Ella began to cry, and Noah's tears returned, and Lila held both her children, rocking them gently while Mariah stood nearby crying silently, hands pressed to her mouth. And in that moment, Lila realized the true cost of Ethan's disappearance. It wasn't the money. It wasn't the headlines. It was this, children learning heartbreak too young. Months passed. Court hearings multiplied. Ethan's business collapsed under scrutiny. Greg Lowe ended up cooperating with investigators to protect what little remained. Claire fought for Liam's rights, her grief turning into fierce resolve. Vanessa gave a sworn statement, face pale, voice shaking, describing how Ethan had charmed her, manipulated her, used her. Ethan tried to speak to Lila twice during proceedings. The first time, in a courthouse hallway, his voice was hoarse. Lila, please. I never meant. Lila cut him off coldly. You didn't mean to get caught. That's all. Ethan flinched as if slapped. That's not true. Lila leaned closer, eyes hard. You watched our kids cry at your funeral. Don't tell me you didn't mean anything. Ethan's eyes filled with tears. I was overwhelmed. Lila's laugh was sharp. I was overwhelmed too, Ethan. I still didn't abandon my children. Ethan's mouth trembled. I loved them. Lila's voice dropped. Then you should have loved them better. She walked away. The second time he tried to speak, it was during mediation about asset distribution. He looked at her with that old soft gaze, like he could summon the past. I'm sorry, he whispered. Lila studied him calmly. No, you're not. Ethan's brows knit. Lila, you're sorry your plan failed, Lila said. You're sorry you lost control. You're not sorry for what you did. Ethan's jaw clenched. You don't know what I was living with. Lila's eyes hardened. You had a wife, 2 kids, a mistress, a second wife, a third woman. You had more love than you deserved, Ethan. And you still chose to burn it. Ethan's face crumpled slightly, and for a fleeting second Lila almost saw guilt. Then he straightened, mask returning. I want to see the kids, he said. Lila's voice was steady. Not until the court decides. And even then, it will be on their terms. Not yours. Ethan's eyes flashed with anger. You can't keep them from me. Lila's smile was cold. Watch me try. Sandra touched Lila's elbow gently, a silent reminder to stay strategic. But Lila's heart was already made of iron. The final court hearing, at least the major one, was brutal. Evidence of fraud was clear. Financial trails. False identity documents. The Montauk setup. The judge's voice was hard as stone when he spoke. Mr. Harper, the judge said, your actions were deliberate and harmful. You subjected your family to emotional trauma and financial manipulation. This court will not treat this as a momentary lapse in judgment. Ethan sat rigid, jaw clenched, eyes fixed ahead. The judge ruled on restitution, on fraud charges, on restrictions. The estate was untangled carefully. Lila protected for Noah and Ella, Claire protected for Liam. Ethan's attempt to erase responsibilities failed. When it was over, Lila stepped outside the courthouse and inhaled cold air like it was the first honest breath she'd taken in a year. Mariah hugged her tightly. "You did it." Lila's voice was quiet. "No, I survived it." Claire approached cautiously, holding papers in her hand, eyes tired. "Thank you," she said softly. Lila looked at her, the complicated feelings still present. They weren't friends, but they weren't enemies anymore either. They were women who refused to be crushed. Claire swallowed. "I'm sorry." Lila nodded once. "Me too." They stood in silence, both thinking about children who would grow up with scars shaped like a man. Then Claire said quietly, "What now?" Lila looked toward the street where cars moved normally, where strangers laughed, where life continued. "Now," Lila said, "we rebuild." Rebuilding wasn't glamorous. It wasn't a montage. It was slow and messy and full of nights where Lila stared at the ceiling and felt rage rise like wildfire. But she rebuilt anyway. She went back to work. She moved to a slightly smaller home. Not because she had to, but because she wanted a place that didn't smell like Ethan's ghost. She started therapy, even though she resisted at first. Her therapist, Dr. Renee Parker, said something that stuck. "You don't heal by forgetting. You heal by refusing to let the wound become your identity." Lila carried that sentence like a quiet weapon. Noah joined soccer again. He laughed sometimes, real laughs that startled Lila because she had forgotten the sound. Ella started sleeping through the night without nightmares. One day, while Lila braided Ella's hair, Ella said casually, "Daddy is a bad man." Lila's hands paused. She swallowed. "Daddy made bad choices." Ella frowned. "Bad choices are when you eat cookies before dinner. Daddy did bigger bad." Lila's throat tightened, and she kissed Ella's head. "Yes," she whispered. "He did." Noah, older and sharper, asked harder questions. "Did he love her more?" Noah asked one night, voice trembling. "The other woman?" Lila sat beside him on his bed, heart aching. "Noah, listen to me. Your dad didn't love anyone more. He loved himself most." Noah's eyes filled. "So he didn't love us?" Lila swallowed hard. "I think he loved you, but not in a way that made him do the right thing. Love without responsibility isn't love that protects." Noah nodded slowly, absorbing pain like kids do, quietly, deeply. Vanessa disappeared from their lives after her testimony. Claire moved to a different building in Chicago, wanting to erase every corner Ethan had touched. Lila and Claire coordinated for the children's sake, sharing updates, making sure court stayed fair. They were careful, not because they trusted Ethan, but because they didn't. Ethan attempted letters to Noah and Ella. Sandra screened them. Most were manipulative, wrapped in "I'm sorry" and "I miss you," laced with subtle blame toward Lila. Lila read one and laughed bitterly. Mariah said, "He's trying to rewrite reality." Lila nodded. "He can try. I'm done living in his story." A year after the day the sea took him, Lila stood on a beach, not Montauk, not Florida, just a quiet shore near her new home. Noah threw a football with Mariah. Ella collected shells, humming. The sun was setting, painting the water in soft gold. Lila stared at the ocean, feeling something strange. Not fear. Not hatred. Just distance. The ocean had been the stage for Ethan's lie, but it wasn't the villain. Ethan was. And Ethan no longer controlled her life. Mariah walked up beside her, hands in her coat pockets. "You okay?" Lila nodded slowly. "I think so." Mariah glanced at the kids. "They're okay." Lila swallowed. "They'll be more than okay." Mariah bumped her shoulder. "You're tougher than you knew." Lila's lips twitched. "I didn't want to be." Mariah nodded. "None of us want to be tough. We just get forced into it." Lila watched Noah laugh as Mariah pretended to miss a catch dramatically, making him giggle. Ella ran up with a shell in her palm. "Mommy, look. It's shaped like a heart." Lila knelt and took it gently. "It is." Ella smiled. "You can keep it, so you don't be sad." Lila's eyes burned. She pulled Ella into a hug and held her tight. "I'm not sad right now," Lila whispered. "I'm proud." Ella blinked. "Of what?" Lila kissed her cheek. "Of us." Ethan Harper didn't drown. He didn't vanish into legend. He didn't get to be mourned as a tragedy. He became what he truly was, a cautionary tale. And Lila became something else too. Not a widow. Not a victim. Not the woman who sat on the kitchen floor with milk on her hands and her heart in her throat. She became the woman who looked at the man she loved and saw him clearly. And when he tried to escape consequences by turning into a ghost, she dragged him back into reality. Because the truth is this: the sea can swallow a body, but it can't swallow justice, not when a woman decides she's done drowning.